How long have you been in the Navy?
Oh, me blowed life.
I'm Jamie Britt.
And I'm Heath Britt.
And together we are E14. We have 40 years of naval service.
And each week we discuss a potpourri of topics, which we like to call smoke pit topics.
These are real world topics that concern us, our marriage, and our Navy with a sailor twist.
So join us each week as we dive into the deep end.
Booyah! Hey everyone, welcome back to E14 Podcast. I'm Jamie Britt.
And I'm Heath
And
Britt.
together we are E14. And who do we have with us today?
Wait, before we get into this, I got to try something.
Okay.
The views and opinions of this podcast do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States military or the veterans.
Oh,
Damn,
you never get it right.
I never get it right. All right,
have
I'm gonna
to-
try it again. I'm gonna try it again. The views and opinions of this podcast does not represent the views and opinions of the U.S. military or the VA.
Yeah, that's good.
So you can
They
take
get the
it
gist.
or leave it.
They get the gist.
All right, today we have with us Matt Cahill. He is the president of the Green Star program. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me, Jamie and Heath. I appreciate it. It's great to be here. and
Our
talk about-
pleasure.
This is
Our
actually
pleasure.
my first time hearing about Green Star. I've always heard about Gold Star families, but
Me
never
too.
Green Star family.
Me too. And I just want to explain something. Dude, your beard is beautiful. That
Well, thank
is
you.
like, you look like a wise man. Like you should be like giving people advice for money.
Or following the star somewhere.
I'm getting there. I'm in
Amazing.
social work school, so hopefully
Oh,
when
yeah.
I'm a therapist, I can get people to give me money for.
You're doing it. You're doing it, man. And real quick, tell us, what do you do these days for relaxation when you're, besides fighting for the rights of families of veterans who committed suicide? I mean, what are you doing?
This is relaxation for me, honestly. When something I feel is wrong is not being corrected, I have to work. I have to do something to try and make it so that it's for everybody, that the injustice is being corrected. And I really think that's what's kind of happening right now with the whole behavioral health side of it for veterans. And so but back to your original question, I have been trying to find things that are relaxing. Mostly in the equine world, I'm getting riding lessons and everything on top of everything that I'm doing, which is very, very relaxing. And then just perfecting in the art of performing equine therapy, spending more time with the horses and that kind of thing very, very much relaxes and soothes me. So that's got to be what I use to to relax and try to unwind and everything, get my mind off of everything else that's going on. So
I hear you, man. Real quick, we'll come back to the horse thing, but tell us, you're a vet. You are a vet yourself.
I am, yes. Yep.
And-
Total time in service is 26 years. I went in
Wow.
1993, straight out of high school. Until 1997, I was on active duty, a medic the whole entire time. In 1997, we really weren't doing much as a country, outside, using the military force for, I should say. And I was looking at the future, and I decided to get out of active duty and come back to Pennsylvania to go to PA school, physician assistant school.
Nice.
And I, picked out Hahnemann as the school that I wanted to go to. So I got out and joined the Pennsylvania National Guard right away. Actually, I never really got out the contracts. I never had a break in service. Came back and joined as a regular National Guard soldier 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, and got in the Hahnemann's BA program, and 9/11 happened. So that kind of changed the trajectory for the rest of my plans.
Yeah.
And then but I think that's what life's most about, is just, going with the flow and adjusting your future goals as best you can if you need to. And when I got back from the train up for my first deployment, I got injured after the 6 months and wasn't allowed to deploy. So I came back and I got the surgery that I needed and was ready to go for the next rotation, which was actually the unit that I was indigenous to, first coming off of active duty, which also included my sister as a medic in the platoon. So we deployed as a unit over to Iraq with my sister.
Was that
Um,
like a conflict of interest since she was a medic and you were, you could be her patient or anything?
No, especially within the National Guard, there's lots of, father, sons, and brothers and sisters
Yeah.
because it's
True.
real local and it's a family
Yeah.
tradition mostly. So I'm the oldest of six. So even if, let's say, both of us were to not make it home, there's still four other siblings. So the government really wouldn't have anything to say. Now, if we were like only kids or something like that,
Right.
there might
right.
be, some hesitation or whatever, as
Mm.
far as we knew. But nobody really put up anything to say. But I mean, on the first deployment, there was a father and two sons. On my deployment, there was a father
Wow.
and a son, so it's crazy. But it's
Wow.
cool because it's more than when I was on active duty and it was like you didn't know this person, your families may cohabitate and close on the military base or what have you. But here, when you're in the National Guard, literally they are your next door neighbors. They're your
Yeah.
teachers,
Yeah.
so it's fascinating, but it's an extra incentive to make sure that you watch over each other to make it all back home. So
Mhm.
Definitely.
And-
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
if I can just stop right there, pause right there. So during the deployment is my first real encounter with a suicide. One of our soldiers, had been contemplating suicide, came to the medics, me, a couple of my other team. And we rose it up the way we were supposed to the channels, and there was a chaplain that was on post that it was a small 1 mile by 1 mile fob. He didn't feel that he needed to go to the next higher echelon, which was Balad, and felt that he could handle the suicidal ideations from this one soldier. And turned out he was wrong. The soldier committed suicide there, and I got to see how the command handled it, and then the higher command, and it wound up where us medics in the unit were trying to do what we had to do for the soldier. What I mean by that is, on a bigger post, CID would come in, do their quick, investigation, and determine, and the body would be taken care of in a timely manner. In this instance, we had to sit on, excuse me. We had to sit with the soldier for 3 extra days after he killed himself. We had to requisition one of the reefers from the mess hall so that we could keep his body at a stable temperature during that heat in Iraq. And
Yeah, definitely.
I just saw how everything unfolded, and I was like, no, something's got to happen. And I'm not one of those people that came up believing that don't just sit around and complain about something. Figure it out, find a fix to it, suggest it, get involved, and don't just be the complainer, be the person maybe with the answer as well. And after I got out, that continues, especially with the Green Star, is just there's something that isn't being fixed, and it isn't right now. So I can sit around and complain all I want, but unless I want to go and become a therapist so that I can take the burden off of the VA and put more therapists out there, especially veteran therapists to veterans, then stop complaining. So that's
Right.
more or less what I did. I just,
I definitely want to segue into something that's a little happier, only because it affected you, Matt. And you said the word at the beginning of the podcast, but I'm really embarrassed. I got an army guy pronouncing words I can't. But it's the horse therapy.
Equine.
equine,
Yeah, say it again.
equine therapy.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. How did that help you, man? And what got? I read the article. I know a lot more than Jamie because actually I read it and I didn't share it with her. That's my fault. But it was a great article, and it really dug down deep to why this helped you and what got you into it. Just explain that, because I just think it's interesting as hell.
So I came back from deployment, and about a year to 2 years later, my wife and I were having a lot of issues, but I was having a lot of my own issues. Right before I was deployed, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And there was some things that, she was worried about when I returned home, how advanced the MS would be and everything. So kept it light, kept it laughing, all this other stuff. But then when I came back, I went through a really bad time, dark time. I considered suicide, and literally my dog looked up at me and gave me this look that I was like, I'm an idiot. Like, I can't do this for him. So we went into therapy through givenhour.org. That's a whole nother story. But I had a friend who ran a horse farm, and she said, hey, are you kind of handy? Like, can you come fix the run-ins, which is just, 3 sides, light roof and some slatted boards and stuff for the horses to get out of the driving rain or anything. And I said, yeah, sure. Let me come take a look at it. I know how to use a saw and, drive some nails. So I volunteered to help her, and it was more or less just me out in the field alone. And horses would come up and just stand around me and, see what I was up to. And I started to be my mind was very calm. So my hands were moving, my mind was on what I was doing, but it was the horses that added that ability for my brain to calm down and not feel so jumpy or, hyper focused on anything, my surrounding or anything. So then when I was getting medical out of the military, I was really struggling with this equation in my brain where the veteran, it was like a math equation. The veteran plus X equals better health and living. But then I was like, well, if you bring in the spouse, well, that's a person who has, opinions and can give a look or give an air of disapproval or whatever. And as a veteran, like, I don't want to tell somebody about the traumas that I've seen because I don't want to give them the trauma to also have the trauma. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So what would work as the X factor so that this equation can be completed? And while watching How to Train Your Dragon, kind of gave me that answer where the dragon is nonverbal. The Viking boy is verbal, and he talks to the dragon just like I talk to my dogs and stuff. But through those two building and fostering their relationship and trust, they both found healing in each other. And it doesn't always have to be the right words that are said. It's just the companionship and the bond that the horse can actually do. That I think has definitely helped me be able to go through therapy, stay connected to therapy, looking forward to therapy, constantly thinking about like what I learned and how to apply it to my life. Because you can't get rid of these memories. There's no, driver or racer thing that I can, download my brain, wipe out all the bad areas and put it back in. It's all a matter of being able to talk about it, being able to, tell someone the fears that are going on right now, knowing 100% that the horse can't turn around like a person and use it against you for whatever reason. So
Right.
That's where it all kind of really fell into place and gave me the structure, which I moved forward with creating VETS, Veteran Equine Therapy Specialists nonprofit. And then I connected with a woman that has actually been doing equine therapy, which I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little secret. So it's actually equine assisted psychotherapy. But we don't like to use the psychotherapy word because most people are like, oh my God, no. But horses, sure, I'll come out and pet horses. It's like, okay, gotcha. Now we're going to teach you, what these horses can actually do for you. And we want to find out more about you. And as you start answering from your subconscious, because your hands are busy and you're paying attention to the horse, we can get more done in one session than most talk therapy sessions take in 3. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
it's really amazing. And there's been huge epiphanies right from the start that just constantly keeps fueling my desire and my urge to be an equine type of therapist and everything like that. So every single session that I have, every single time, we do something with the horses, it definitely reignites my passion for it every single session. So, and we've seen great things and great results from it, much better than, being medicated down or trying to do, talk therapy where it's, a Freudian theory. So therefore, no. Like,
right.
That's where I think it's imperative for veterans to be treating veterans and, people who have lived through traumatic experiences to be therapists, to teach other people how to continue past and heal properly from their trauma.
So not only did it help you, you've seen it help on a various amount of people.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Like miracle wise, like things that I thought I could only read about it in a book, just from so many different things, making a person feel like they're not responsible for what occurred, to people falling in love with themselves. To see that is, you see people who don't love themselves a lot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you walk down the street and you see, various things, I'm not going to get into it, but to see the life and the desire and the lust for life come back into a person is, it's the best experience I have, which I think is what heals me to continue to going as well. But I've seen these people not only just do like get the lust back for life, but want to be back in life totally. So, you know, then they go out and they start working for another nonprofit, or they start engaging and acting in the community more and stuff like that. So it really is nice to see. And I think it is really, really, really good therapy than anything that's out there currently. So
That's awesome.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it again because I wanted to go into this. You know, this is my first time hearing about Green Star families. I've always heard about Gold Star, but Green Star is something new, and I don't know a lot of people really know what that is. Can you go into that a little more?
Roger, I mean, I think the main reason why they don't know about it is because it technically is new.
Mhm.
It's not federalized yet. So right after I joined Widener's social work program, excuse me, in one of my classes, we had to read this book. It's called From Poor State to, hold on, I wrote it down because I always screw this book up. From Poor Law to Welfare State, with one of my instructors, Jen Norton, and that went over how the Blue Star Service Banner came to be. That went
Mhm.
over how the Gold Star Service Banner came to be. And I was in the middle of dealing with my cousin Wes's suicide. And in August of 2020, a good friend of mine committed suicide, which really rocked me. And I was, you know, debating on whether or not we needed something. So in military culture, it's very custom to go up to, you know, a family of a service member that passed and, you know, address them as a Gold Star family or a Gold Star mother, that kind of thing. So I wanted to address my cousin and my cousin's mom, and I didn't quite know how to address her because she's not a Gold Star mother. She's not a Blue Star mother any longer, you know, that kind of thing. So I started kicking around the idea of the Green Star, how to go about getting it through the government to become federalized and federally recognized and that kind of thing. But the more that we did this and researched it, the more we came up with the answer that, you know, Gold Star, when it was created, I think put a lot of focus and emphasis on how to not create gold stars, such as how do you survive battlefield injuries, you know? And so the military pioneered how to treat gunshot wounds, how to treat amputations and that kind of stuff, of which definitely serves the civilian populace out in the streets today, and local ERs and that kind of stuff use military inventions and interventions to handle and save people's lives. So I started thinking like, okay, if we do a Green Star, one, it can address the stigma of mental health and behavioral health and suicide. It can put all resources towards figuring it out to be the strongest military in the world. Right now, we are the strongest military because, oh, we can go conquer and everything like that and come home and mostly be alive. But then we're starting to lose the war on the opposite end where our veterans are taking their own lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So to be the strongest military would be to survive combat as well as the aftermath of combat. So in much with that, and all the focus is being focused on mental health and breaking the stigma down and everything, like this is much bigger than a military or a veteran type of thing. So when civilians are like, well, what, you know, civilians commit suicide as well, and you know, what are you going to do for them? It's like, well, we are doing something for them by identifying this first.
Mhm.
Because if all resources get focused on the mental health issue, we can figure out how to combat PTSD or moral injury and MST and that kind of stuff, which will definitely make it down to the civilian world eventually. But for right now, the families of veterans, once they commit suicide, are out on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I
sure.
mean? So if a soldier, you know, or and the Green Star isn't Army specific or anything like that. If I can go over the colors real quick, obviously,
Yeah.
it's, you know, just like the gold and blue service banners. The main reason why we went with green was because when we looked up suicide, it was actually two colors. It was teal and purple.
Purple.
And mental health was Kelly green. So we started talking about, you know, so the star is to represent the service member. So when it's a blue star, that means that the family has one service member that is away at the military.
Mhm.
When that blue star turns to gold, that means that that service member has died in conflict or war or anything like that. So the star represents the soldier, the veteran, the service member. When it turns green, then that is a sign to the world that that family's veteran committed suicide And then the purple, actually, if you can look right here, the purple actually represents the family.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we did research, into the Institute of Heraldry with the military colors and representations and what they mean, and all of this. So this is built for the entire military. It's not service specific, and it's definitely not any parties
Right.
baby, if you will. It's definitely nonpartisan. It serves everybody, including civilians. And this is, I think it just really needs to get through so we can see what all can come from the federal recognition of a Green Star. So
Wow.
So Matt, so sounds to me, dude, that you're trying to support the families of veteran suicide or
Yes.
civilian suicide, but it almost seems like it's almost like going to be maybe, if you get your way, a preventive measure also.
most definitely.
Oh, that's perfect. Because, we've been talking on this podcast and we've brought it up a couple of times, but where we really see, especially in the Navy, where we really see a problem is on that deployment where you're trying to go back through and process out, and they're asking, do you have any thoughts of suicide? Do you feel depressed? And you've been away from your family for so long, and all you want to do is just get home. And so you're like, yeah, whatever it takes to get home. And that's where we've really seen or really uncovered one of the potential problems for preventative maintenance right there.
It's making it more of a pain in the ass
Mhm.
than helpful. You know what I mean? Like you've been away from your family for a year. A lot of times you're going to do anything in your power to go see them as soon as possible when you get back to the States.
Yeah.
Definitely. And sure, you can look at how a program is set up, and especially with mental health, it's not like a physical injury. Like, hey, is your elbow hurt right now? No, good. Okay, you can go home.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah.
you good right now? Of course I'm good right now because I want to go home and I want to, reintegrate with my family and that kind of thing. But there's a lack of follow-up to make sure that everything's
Yeah.
okay. And more questions need to be asked, because I've done the questionnaires, a year after as a follow-up. Hey, you can think about committing suicide. But what I am learning now through school versus what I saw going, when I demobbed is what it's called when we come home.
Demob, thank you. I couldn't remember the word.
At least in the Army, I don't know for the other services, but there was no questions of like, how are you doing with your spouse?
Yeah.
How are you doing with your partner? How are you, feeling your relationship is with your kids and everything? Because those are telltale signs that there's a problem that's arising, that's starting. That's when the patterns of drinking occur. That's when the patterns of distancing or, withdrawing into yourself or cheating on your spouse or what have you. That's when all of that, I think, can be found. But until we really put a lot of focus onto the whole behavioral health side, which I can't fault the military or the government for not doing so as of yet. I mean, the Army or the world, well, the United States, I should say, didn't recognize PTSD until the 80s as a mental health condition. So we're covering a lot of ground, but I think if we do it just a little bit smarter, we can do it quicker. So
yeah, I just think about what you said. PTSD was not even recognized until the 80s. And you think about all the ugly wars that were fought prior to the 80s. I mean, 1, 2, Vietnam, and
Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Somalia.
Right.
I mean, look at all that. So, and warfare has changed throughout the years, and the diagnoses have changed as well, which is why we're staying pretty much with the general thing, because I'm sure it's going to change again.
Right.
Which is how science should be. As it changes and it knows more and it evolves, it's going to change it, their name. And that's, I think, part of the confusion and chaos right now is you have all these, suicide awareness groups do 22 push-ups a day. And I don't really want to name specific veterans organizations or foundations or what have you. But that they're out there and there's a million of them. Well, we've done the whole protesting thing and information thing with the push-ups and the challenges and all that. But for real change to occur is where the laws need to come and get changed and lobbied for. So I think there's a big enough influence. I think there's a big enough push. And I think there's an increasing need, because we still have veterans that are committing suicide, whether it be to COVID-19 and the seclusion that brings, whether it be the war in Ukraine really starting to, set off other people's PTSDs and be triggers. And it's still an issue today. So I think we really need to one as a country come together, end the stigma, recognize, psychological conditions and suicide and depression and everything and PTSD, and really start to evaluate what works and what doesn't. The VA is still stuck kind of in the past, which I get. The government moves very slowly, but their big thing was pharmaceuticals, push medications. But then when there's newer medications that don't cause such major side effects or neurologic conditions or other things like that, you need to move quickly and move with the times. And they're just not doing it.
Yes, they're staying in the Flintstone age with these
Definitely.
medicines.
And I wanted to ask you, we talked on the phone before this podcast. We had a good conversation. Interrupted my workout. That's all right though.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I was doing my walk, so it was perfect time. But I think 22 a day is kind of low. And you opened my eyes to that. I didn't think about like a drug overdose. Let's say a vet ODs.
Yeah.
That's a drug overdose. That's not suicide. Who's to say it wasn't?
Or drinking too much.
Or drinking.
Exactly.
Or alcoholism.
And what we're uncovering with trying to move forward with the whole picture of Green Star and how to get numbers that are attainable with cost analysis that goes with it. Because of course, that's what government wants. I want to know where my money's going and how it's being spent and why it's being spent. So, but the problem is that, and this differs from state to state, but I can only tell you what I've researched so far in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and a few other states. There really is no 100% process when someone dies.
Yeah.
If it seems like natural causes, the police come, they call, the coroner, or the family's funeral home that they chose that they want to work with. They come in and take the body and, fill out the death certificate just saying, person died. Unless somebody suspects something other than just that, then really nothing goes into a national database as to how they died or why they died or anything like that. And I understand. I mean, if your parent is elderly and they've had numerous medical problems and you don't want them to be violated anymore by like an autopsy or something, we'll definitely follow the family's wish. And I think the law should be built around that. But one of the major things is if a veteran who's never done drugs, let's just say in a case scenario, never done any drugs or whatever, and wants to commit suicide, but doesn't want to use a shotgun and make the house messy or whatever, and ODs, that's an OD. Like you were saying, it is not considered a suicide.
Yeah.
Same thing with, driving at high rates of speed. A couple of veterans that I'm familiar with have taken their lives through using a vehicle. Most of it is, high rates of speed in an SUV trying to take the culvert ditches. I mean, that's not normal. Like what another soldier on a motorcycle doing over 100 miles an hour and decides to bounce between, semis and stuff like that. It's unbecoming of their character, but we still don't have a good definition of a suicide and how we would go about determining whether it was a suicide or it wasn't suicide. So
right.
That's because I think anyways that there's no cookie cutter approach to mental health. It could look like speeding around, or it could look like an overdose or drinking too much, or it could look like just a happy person one day and the next day they decided that they were going to go swimming and drown. It's just there's no cookie cutter approach, and so it's hard to say this was a veteran that was mentally had mental health issues.
And then you mentioned it, we talked about it, is that what if the family is very religious? They don't want their son or daughter's death certificate to say suicide. First of all, a lot of religious people are worried about what other people think about them. And people look down, they could hear it. They could hear people talking about him because it was a suicide. And so they might say, oh no, he was driving fast. He is a vehicular, or it was, I don't know how drug overdose, anything but suicide. And to the people that are religious, they're not want to see suicide on that death certificate at all.
Well, I mean, and it depends on how far we need to go to change things. I mean, every religion has a hierarchy, and when their rules and their laws and things came down, it was to serve a specific time frame of humanity, if you will. You know what I mean? So as science increases, then the religions have to get stronger for their explanations and reasonings for things. So, it's all a matter. I'm not out to change any religion. I'm not
Right,
trying to
right.
break any religion, but I mean, I would like for religious leaders to possibly, review this and look at it and say, is this really something that we need to keep on the table as this person going to hell or this person, not dying, a proper death, so
Right,
who's to say for what? I mean,
right, right. But you
But-
gotta,
when
Go
it
ahead.
comes down to the family who's needs to heal from it. I mean, like I was talking about traditions of brothers, sisters, fathers and sons joining the military and stuff. So too is the tradition where, the families will keep coming to give our volunteer military the numbers they need. But if your parent, comes back from war and winds up committing suicide and you need to seek mental health care through the civilian system, that right there labels you to where you cannot join the military, depending on how bad, if you had to be hospitalized or
Right.
on a certain medication or what have you.
right,
Or if they don't need to seek behavioral health care, but they're just not going to follow the family tradition to join the military, we're literally doing ourselves an injustice by not helping the future volunteer military force, So
yeah,
in 10, 20 years, when numbers are real low and nobody's really joining the military because, with healthcare benefits is usually why people join college benefits, and most of that stuff's becoming free now. So what is the government going to entice families to come in so that they can, or members to come in so that they can, better themselves and better their families' lives and that kind of stuff if nobody's joining? So if we start working on this now and help these families heal properly, we will have our volunteer military continued in the service. Not only that, but these families really need the help. So
Yeah.
many times, the first questions are, well, how am I going to pay the mortgage? What am, it's all the upfront stuff, but 6 months to a year later on, how do they deal with, let's just say a family member found the veteran after they committed the
Mhm.
suicide, and
Right.
they don't have the resources to be able to move from that home, and they have to walk past that room every day, or they're still finding things that you can't always clean up right off the bat on the first chance.
yeah,
Psychological impact that has, I mean, it's just too hard to even try to fathom what it'd be like to find your loved one, that off themselves there, and then to not really have any resources from the government so that you can, get better.
Mhm.
right.
I don't
Because-
want to say that you can move on from it because it's something that I think will always be with somebody, but there's ways to deal with the feelings that come up better than, possibly. And there has been trends where, they could say it's familial with suicide. So, if the son is that depressed or the daughter's that depressed from witnessing what they witnessed and then they commit suicide, I mean, it's a never ending cycle. And I just think that we really need to focus on that right now. And it's time.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
I mean, there's we've busted down every other barrier, I think, between, health conditions and cancers and obesity, like so many other things have been addressed and already put out there. I think we as Americans can definitely start to have that behavioral health, psychological, talk
Yeah.
and realization and recognition, because it's everybody knows somebody who has mental health issues or is mentally ill. But ask anybody, okay, so what's the course? If you ask somebody about cancer, it's like, oh, I got diagnosed this and we started chemo and we did that and that didn't work out, so I went on hospice. There's nothing for mental health. It's, well, we think he's schizophrenic, but we're not really sure because he can't afford help. I mean, now I'm going off on a tangent, but sorry. There's a lot of reasons why mental health in this country really just needs to come to fruition, and enough. Stop making it a stigma. Start making it, easy to talk about. Like, I mean, here's point for reference with social media. If I type the word suicide, it doesn't get posted. I mean, come on.
Really?
This
Wow.
is just a word. Like, if I type in anything like, hey, go on congress.gov and look for this bill, as soon as it registers as Congress or congress.gov, it won't post the post either. Because things I think too much today are, one-sided, whether it's, totally to the right or totally to the left. But when you have an issue that's both, I don't think social media is caught up yet with understanding, oh, okay, we can post this because it's not inflammatory to either side. This is just,
Mhm.
call to action to try and get stuff done. So I never knew how much I'd be battling on all different sides with trying to get this going, but it's, opening up a can of worms. And
I was just gonna
Sounds like
say,
it.
what a
Holy cow.
huge elephant you have to eat, or what a huge mountain you have to climb. I mean,
Right.
that is just overwhelming with as much things or as much stuff as you have to think about when going into it. What are some, I guess, what are some resources that you are specifically looking for from the government?
from the government right now, we just want the recognition of the Green Star service banner, as you can see
Got it.
behind me.
Yep.
I think that'll be the first domino to start the whole ripple effect of wherever this is going to lead. And just those, so what I described is just some of them. I'm sure
Right.
there's things we haven't figured out yet or uncovered that is going to be needs to be improved before we can continue with the main mission. But if they recognize that and federally back it and say, yes, this is a thing and these families can be referred to as Green Stars, I think that's the domino effect to getting everybody to work together. All of the
Right.
nonprofits about, veteran suicide awareness, and the government to even say, like, you know what, this is a major thing and we need to focus on it. I'm sure the budget's broken down for how much goes to, medicine in the military side and researching and that kind of thing that they're doing on their own. If they can, lobby some money towards mental health in that direction, military medicine again can lead with civilian improvements. So I think this benefits everybody, not just veterans or veterans
So,
families.
so when did you start this process? I mean, this mind-boggling process. When did you start this, and where are we at right now?
So it was the summer of 2020, but right before that, on March 16th, my cousin Wes had committed suicide, and that had stung me and kind of made me unbalanced a little bit. And that's when I started thinking about the Green Star and didn't know if I wanted to. So I didn't think I had to create a nonprofit to back the concept of a Green Star. I thought I could just go to, my representative, propose it, and they'd be like, dude, this is awesome. And then, it would just go through the government. But
Right.
after we were in about the third draft of it, my representative, Van Drew, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but anyway, his office got back to me and they kind of said, hey, you guys said you researched the Gold Star and the Blue Star, but do you know that like the nonprofit that's behind it, make sure that it never gets altered for anything other than its purpose? And I was like, wow, I didn't look at it that way, but okay. So we started researching that more and understood that we needed to create a nonprofit that would always safeguard the service banner itself. So I talked with a couple of friends who I'd already maybe spitballed, the concept and the idea, and automatically I had a board in less than 4 hours of, retired veterans, family members that have veterans and everything. And we still continue to grow today. And if we get a chance to explain what Green Star is, everybody that we've explained to has been sold immediately.
Yeah.
So, we have been approached by people in Alaska and people in North Carolina to start chapters of Green Star within their state. And then once we hit the slowdown, let me get back to the story. So Wes committed suicide, and then my good friend Andy McCaffrey committed suicide, and that actually made it so that I couldn't talk for 2 days. I didn't know what that was. I thought I just didn't want to talk to people, but like I physically was not able to even speak. So I never thought that anybody's death would hit me that hard, or let alone have physical ramifications because of my brain, and I was like, okay, this is definitely a thing. So in August of 2020, we officially formed Green Star Families of America. We worked with Van Drew's office, and we were able to put a bill in front of Congress in August of 2021. Since then, it's been referred to the Veterans Subcommittee on Health, of which they're trying to come up with a numeric number of how many family members would be entitled to services if we backdate it to September 11th, 2001, which is also in the bill. And to me, that's an uncalculable number as of right now. So hopefully with the next Congress coming in 2023, we're going to resubmit a bill that has numbers that can be accumulated so that they can get a budget monetary value affixed, so that more senators and congressmen can sign on to getting this bill passed. So, but yeah, it's definitely taken off, and people are interested. We even had the daughter of my friend on the Green Star board, and something she brought to the table that I never thought of was, while her father was alive and she was entitled to a dependent ID card, if traveling, she could go into a USO at an airport. And when she was actually traveling down to the memorial event we were having for her father, she was denied access into the USO because she lost her ID card. And she can't get another one because without the veteran, you can't just
Right.
go and re-update your card.
Right.
And she's like, she's mentally distraught. She's traveling. And one of the comforts that she's come accustomed to is going into the USO when there's a layover or what have you. And I mean, she didn't push the issue. It's not like USO people were being mean and said, nah, I don't care. No, it's just the mental impact that she had, due to this whole thing, that was one of the things that she can't look back on as having, to help make her trip something a little bit better. So.
Right. Definitely. That would have helped a lot, just to have that
Just
little
that
comfort.
familiarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Jeez.
And especially during COVID, when the layovers weren't just like an hour or two. I mean, it could be a day or more, and to have that one resource that you can kind of escape and get away from the populace, especially with the thoughts that she was having coming down to a memorial service for her father, it's imperative and it's needed. And all it takes is one little choice and a flick in the book, and it would have been possible. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, who knows where this is going to ripple effect down to, but it
Yeah.
really does affect a lot of things. So, and a lot of it would be positive with just being able to federally recognize it,
Right. Do you find yourself getting a lot of roadblocks thrown at you?
Nothing
it-
overt, which I'm glad for, because then I really get angry. When I
Right.
feel
can
like it's
see.
a personal, like malicious type of thing, and I'm standing
Uh-huh.
in your way just cause. There's friends that are like, yeah, I don't care, I don't want to hear about this, and they're retired, and I get it. I mean, but at the same time, I wish everybody would kind of understand, especially veteran wise, that these veterans groups that have been out there forever, like VFW, DAV, Wounded Warrior is still pretty new, but all of these organizations fight for your rights in Congress. So to not
Yeah.
even become a member just to help support that, or physically get out there and do things, so that, I'm learning you need a large following to lobby, the government,
Yeah.
which is the only way true change can occur. So, like I was saying, with the awareness and all of that, that was more or less the demonstrating time period. Now's the time period to change laws and get law written for veterans, which will obviously help the civilians, later on. So,
Definitely.
It's funny you brought up like the 22 push-ups or whatever. People are very, very comfortable with awareness. They're very comfortable recording themselves doing push-ups, but what they're not comfortable about is talking about suicide to the extent that you are bringing it to, at them. And I think that that's one of the struggles, or one of the red tapes that you're going to have to deal with, because we as military members tend to be very hush hush about our mental health. And it, no matter how much we speak out on it and how much comfort we make around that you're still going to have, especially those active duty members, just be like, well, I'll do 22 push-ups, but I won't
I don't want to talk about my feelings.
yeah,
I'll
I
just
don't
do
want to talk about my
push-ups.
feelings.
well, not
And-
even that. I mean, we ask people to, just go on their computer, go to congress.gov, ask who your representative is. There's like a tab that you click on and you put in your information, and it tells you who you can write to.
Mhm.
So all you have to say is, please support HR 5036, which is the bill that's in Congress. You don't have to really mention mental health or anything like that, and hit send, and it goes right to your representative. So the more of those messages that they get, they're like, hey, let me go talk to this guy about HR 5036, or, you know what, I think this person over here would want to hear about that and support this bill. But I won't limit it to just veterans, but I do think it's funny that they'll videotape themselves and put it on social media.
Mhm.
And so you're out there, your home is behind you, there's all this stuff now that's being broadcast out there, but you won't even just go in and send an email real quick where everything is already like pre-labeled to your representative and everything. just to ask them to support this bill. So at the very least, if everybody would just go on there, find your representative and send them an email to support HR 5036, that's all you got to say. And, we'll get a whole lot more representatives coming to us to ask about it. Which we've also found too, to be kind of interesting, is there was 2 or 3 suicide bills proposed to Congress on the same exact day.
Wow.
So how did these representatives not know that the other representative was submitting one as well?
Oh, yeah.
We're right now researching all the bills and then contacting those organizations that have already put bills in front of Congress that mostly are exactly like Green Star, but not like Green Star, where they're proposing a service banner, or, one group wants to specifically have combat veterans who commit suicide, which, to me, if you're going to do something, encompass what the history has shown, which the largest group of veterans that are committing suicide are those that never even deployed.
Mhm.
Your second largest number are those that deployed, and then your smallest number actually are the veterans who saw combat. And I've had friends ask me, why do I think that might be? And I resorted back to think about something that you were always looking forward to doing or not looking forward to do, and your mind started building the worst case scenario with goblins and monsters and everything. Then you experience that event and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't half of what my brain was worried about, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And I think combat veterans who've seen combat or were in firefights or anything like that, they got to live through and witness what it was like, so they can cancel out the really bad demons that your mind creates. And where this really hit me was when Mel Gibson was doing Braveheart, and they said, why do you cut away real quick before like the hammer hits the person's helmet or makes contact with the flesh? And he said, because the people's brains will match what they want to see. So if your brain isn't very graphic or hasn't advanced all the way to knowing or visualizing what a skull crush would look like, then you didn't have that choice in the movie. And so it would affect everybody differently because they didn't put their concept of what was happening in there. So if you take that concept and you apply it over the veterans that are committing suicide, I can tell you from being, ramped up and getting told we're going to go and deploy, a whole lot of fears. What was life going to be like for a year? Was it going to be combat every single day? What about my family at home? And, all these things. And if it never got justified, I'd probably still have those fears in my brain because I never got to experience what it was really like, to where I can get rid of some of those fears.
That's what I learned through my demobilization, was the waiting is where you see PTSD, because the combat is the release or the the physical action of doing it, but the waiting is where you develop that, because your adrenaline and everything is heightened for so long, for months and months and months, but you never get to release it, or you never get to experience it. So you just come back home with that heightened sense of, I don't know, adrenaline, whatever it may be.
That's true.
And yeah, I mean, that's a very, very good point. It's technically getting trained to listen to more and think quicker and be in survival mode, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Then you come back to where you don't need to be in survival mode because you are just living right now, and you don't have to check to make sure there's not a sniper across the street, or you don't got to move tactically to go to the refrigerator and get a soda or something. And come on, how many veterans that deployed actually come home and they're like, just for old time's sake, I'll low crawl to the,
Yeah.
And then your dogs are sitting there looking at you like, oh, okay, what are you doing? So, I mean, there's times that I still come back up and grab my M4 and, we'll start cleaning it or whatever, even though I haven't shot it, just something that brings me back, and I don't want to say gives me security, but assures me that if I need that level of security, that it's here. So then you can't, especially with this whole suicide thing, you can't just go down the pike and be like, all right, well, veterans can't own guns or weapons. And it's like, now you're creating another issue. So yeah, there's lots of tricky, pitfalls left and right. But until there's at least a term that can help bind and combine all the groups and all the thoughts that even somewhat resemble this topic, there can never be the start to getting this figured out and taken care of.
I
mean,
think it's
You can't work on any problem until you've labeled what the problem is
right.
and identify it. And right now, well, it's veteran suicide. Well, and there's numerous names, but if you were to give Green Star that name to all of this that encompasses this whole topic of veteran suicide,
And all the ripples too.
and all the
Yeah.
ripples, exactly. And even though the scientific name may change for PTSD, like I know when they offered PTS and then they backtracked on that as well. So the diagnosis is going to go through numerous changes, but the whole department of like behavioral health, I think, can be, collected up underneath the Green Star service banner. So
Definitely. I just think it's interesting that if every vet and every civilian that supports vets just went and got with their congressman about HR 5036, right?
yes, sir.
That I think that would do a world of good for your fight.
Mhm.
Most definitely.
And definitely, I just want to reach out and say to whoever listens to this, pass it on.
Better than doing push-ups.
Yes, it's more effective than push-ups.
More
I
effective than
appreciate the
Way more
push-ups, but this
Way
this
more
is
effective.
this gets the government involved, and if their voters, these senators' voters, see or the senators see their voters are passionate about this, they want to stay in office too.
Mhm.
So I think they were more apt to do something about it.
And I'm going to make an admission, and I know it's kind of an unpopular one, but it's how I truly feel in my heart. So if anybody has an issue with what I'm about to say, I'm sorry, but look at it from my point of view. Especially with this war in Ukraine and how many people is, all the news agencies, Fox is giving 25 million to the
Right.
Red Cross and, support Ukraine and support the war in Ukraine is something the Americans should fight. There's a war of veteran suicides going on right now, and it's been going on for 20 years.
Mhm.
And America has ADD, and I get it. I was on one newscast and they were asking, oh, well, do you think that the withdrawal from Afghanistan is what is causing the spike in suicides? No, because we've been fighting, and we keep veterans who pay attention know how many times we were attacked and veterans were killed in Afghanistan in the 10 years leading up to the withdrawal. But now all of a sudden the withdrawal, and then one side has a talking point about it, and then I'm going to try and get this person to admit that this is the reason. And I don't believe that. The reason is because we've been fighting this war. Now the Ukraine thing is the hot topic, which all Americans are looking at, but soon they'll have ADHD and ADD about that as well. They'll forget about it. It'll go on.
Right.
So before you support whatever effort you think you're donating to, which everything is too fresh, too quick, and too evolving, to know that if you actually donate money, that it's going to make it anywhere to help Ukraine at all. But I can guarantee you that if you donate time or money or whatever towards the Green Star service banner effort, you are directly affecting veterans in the United States.
Mhm.
Great point,
So,
man.
it's just frustrating because everything's about like, oh, come to this webinar, come to this, and light a candle. What about the veterans? I mean, you pass, I'm sure, homeless ones in your daily walk or visiting the city or anything.
Yeah.
There's lots of veterans that still need our help in this country. Sadly, unfortunately, there is. So please think about what's going on out there. I mean,
Wow.
yes, it's atrocious what's happening in Ukraine. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely do not agree with what, Putin's doing and all that other stuff, but that's neither here nor there. Right here and right now is what I can see and physically affect, which is the U.S. veterans with their mental health.
And this need has slapped everybody in the face. We
Mhm.
all know somebody that's committed suicide, a
Or
veteran.
know
that's-
someone
knows-
that knows someone that is affected by it,
Right.
so it's like you said, the ripple effect is wide.
It is a pandemic. No
It
doubt
is.
about it. Because it's like COVID was the pandemic, and I guarantee you knew somebody or you had COVID yourself. This is just no different.
Mhm.
This is no different. It's just a different animal, but it's the same thing.
Exactly. And
Same
it's still
thing.
one that is somewhat taboo. So nobody really
Yeah.
wants to talk about it, either
Right.
because of their own personal feelings, their religious views, or they just don't want to upset other people.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you'd rather go to a funeral than actually say words and focus on this? I mean, no, I don't want to go to any more funerals.
I hear you.
anymore.
But then I was talking to Matt on the phone. This has been about a month ago. And I was like, man, you're doing all this stuff. I thought he was in his 20s.
Mhm.
I said, well, how old are you, man? He goes, well, I'm 46. I'm like, you're my age. And I'm seriously, you are all over the place. Tell us some of the things that you're going to school, you're doing the horse therapy. What you're into a lot of stuff.
Roger. So yeah, I run Vets Nonprofit, which we do therapies, sessions with veterans. And the way it's working right now, because I don't have a counseling degree or license or anything like that, I work under a licensed professional counselor, LPC. She's my mentor for both the equine therapy and for the behavioral health types of therapy, who also suggested that I go to school for social work. Her name is Jeannie Mahoney, and I spent maybe 3 or 4 months working under her and went right into Widener's Master of Social Work program. So then I was doing both the equine therapy and running the nonprofit. And really all my job is with the nonprofit is to have funds available to pay for the therapy that we've negotiated with Jeannie and her therapist. So that it's not the going rate and it's a little bit lower, and we can get veterans in without the hassle of going through insurances and waiting for payment to come through and that kind of stuff, which has really helped, I believe. COVID came along, really cut down on my fundraising abilities, but Wounded Warrior program came through and was actually paying for the equine sessions, which is awesome. And then with my friend and my cousin committing suicide, we started up Green Star. So that was another slice that I'm giving time to the horses and the therapy, and I'm doing school and I'm doing the Green Star. But I'm also the surgeon for my post VFW, my
Wow.
VFW post 1086.
Jeez.
There you go.
And I was on Swedesboro's Planning and Zoning Commission, and as well as the Environmental Commission, or Planning and Zoning Board, and then the Environmental Commission. I had to pull off of that simply because I was really, really busy with everything else that was requiring my time. There's a new initiative out by the VA that they're pushing. It's called Together with Veterans. We're still evaluating that. But as of right now, I'm contemplating being one of the very first 3 members that have to sign. They're called like a steering committee and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I have to keep going. I have to have something to do, and I have to feel like it's important. And I think what I'm doing is very important, not only to revitalize why I'm doing what I'm doing, but as well as seeing the ripple effect to other people when they are helped by the services that I'm involved with. And being in the veteran community and owning a nonprofit, it's vital to get out and work with other veteran nonprofits, because like one guy does pheasant hunting. So I obviously don't cover that, but there has been people where I've looked at and said, you know what, you just kind of need time to be around other veterans and reconnect with, a group. And I, refer them over to going out and pheasant hunting, and the turnaround in people with just being around like-minded types of people is amazing. So
Yeah.
the more veteran nonprofits I know about, the more people I refer to there, the more we can all work together, such as the SAR, Suicide Awareness Flag. Those guys are making a good push, and they're on a government track as well. They're just doing it the way of the POW MIA flag, which was more or less backed by like the VFW, and they made a push to come up, and that's actually a different track than like what I'm taking to get a bill passed. So
Yeah.
Wow.
I applaud their efforts and what they're doing, and all the organizations that are trying to bring awareness to suicide and whatever else with veterans. But then you also got your fakes out there too. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you
They're
got
out
to
there.
research. You got to make sure who you're talking to and what the organization is actually doing what they're saying. And that's a sad part of it, but I can't really do anything about it. I just make sure that what we're doing is exactly what needs to be being done, and that all funds are directed directly towards getting those 2 things done. So
Awesome, Matt. Well, I tell you what, this hour has been eye-opening,
Yeah.
and we've been spending the last hour with a great American, Matt Cahill. Thank you for joining us, man. Dude, get out there and support this bill. HR 5036 is easy
Yeah.
to do.
Tell us one more time how to do it.
Yeah.
For the listeners.
Roger, so the best thing I think, honestly, to stay up to date with everything that we're doing is go to our webpage at Green Families, or I'm sorry, getting a little tired here.
No, that's fine.
greenstarfamilies.org. We have a link directly to the bill. We have a link directly to contact your representative. We have other links to petitions so that we can get certain other things done in order to get the Green Star bill passed through Congress. And like and follow us. That way, when we do have new information, we post it. It's easy to post on Facebook. I can honestly say I'm decent with Facebook. Twitter and Instagram, I was talking with Heath that like I'm still not able to really figure it all out. So I've got people that do that.
That's the army in
Yeah.
you. We don't hold that against you. That's the army in you.
But it's so easy, especially with Facebook. Like, hey, we just got a call from Van Drew's office. It's moving to this subcommittee or what have you, and
Right.
we can post it, and everybody knows about it, and everybody can move forward with it. So I think that would be the best thing. Find us on Facebook or social media site, or just visit our website, and you can see
So-
exactly where we're at and what we're doing. So
Yeah, so they are on Facebook and they are on Twitter and Instagram. So Green Star Families, it'll come up. Just all you got to do is do that in the search engine for either Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I found them today on Instagram, and we were already friends on Twitter, and now I'm gonna look for y'all on Facebook. But thanks again for joining us, man, and opening up our eyes and hopefully a lot of other people's eyes, and get these vets the help they need and their families supported when they need to be supported.
thank you both so much for allowing me to explain Green Star. Like I said, when I float the concept, most people don't understand it, but if they actually listen, it makes sense. So if anybody has any questions that's listening, or future questions, don't hesitate to email me. It's matt.cahill@greenstarfamilies.org. And I always answer or have someone get back to you in a very quick time frame. So
Cool, man. And we're about to close out, but please stick around for a second if you don't mind.
yes, sir.
With that, we'll wish you fair winds.
And following seas.